The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
I don't know if you're listening to the beginning of the show. Can you give us any updates? Is there any information you'd like to pass out?
Okay. Hey, no, I was not able to listen to the beginning of the show because I was on the phone with Mike Zullo, as a matter of fact. And so I was supposed to call in right now, so that's what I was doing.
Okay, Carl, why don't you give out how people can contact you and give us any updated information you may have and you want to release?
Okay. Did you give your audience an idea of who I was earlier in the show? I don't want to repeat a bunch of stuff.
No, I did not, Carl.
Okay. All right. Well, my name's Carl Gallups, and I'm the founder of the P.P. Simmons News and Ministry Internet site, a longtime senior pastor, a former Florida law enforcement officer, blessed to be a #1 best-selling author as well. But probably what you're interested in and what your audience is interested in is that I have been deeply involved with Sheriff Arpaio, Lieutenant Mike Zullo, Cold Case Posse, criminal investigation on the Obama fraud case, the Obama fraudulent document case, the long-form birth certificate proffered by the Obama administration and posted on the White House website. I'm also a conservative talk radio host for many, many years, Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, heard all over the nation and around the world. And we deal with this issue a lot. Mike Zullo and I are in contact with each other every single day. I do not claim to be an official spokesperson for Mike or Sheriff Arpaio, but I do work closely with them, and we stay, as I said, in daily contact. The latest update is, listen, it is a 100% criminally provable, 100% courtroom-ready case that the document on the White House website proffered by Obama is a complete forgery. It's a fraud. It's a criminal offense. And the thing is, Michael, as you know, that is the only identifying document ever put forth by this administration as to who the man in the White House is. Now, that's a scary thing to think of, Michael, because, I mean, he's been in office 5 years now. No one has ever vetted him. No one. The Congressional Research Service has put it in writing that it is a fact. He has never been vetted by anyone, regardless of how loudly people want to claim that he has been. He has not. And the only document that he has ever proffered as his official long-form birth certificate, it turns out, is a complete fabrication. And it's a bad fabrication. And so a couple of questions exist now, Michael. Number one, who created the document? That person needs to be in prison. It's an absolute prisonable offense. Secondly, why would that person and the people who ordered him to do it feel it necessary to fabricate an identifying document, my word, Michael, for the President of the United States? Why would there be a need to do that? Well, there's only a couple of viable, logical answers. And you got to remember now, I spent 10 years in Florida law enforcement, several of those years doing my own criminal investigation. So I've had some experience with these kinds of matters. There's only a couple of answers as to why in the world the White House would release a fabricated, fraudulent document. Number one would be somebody just decided it would be a funny joke to play on the American public. Of course, the tragedy of that is that that's no joking matter, and they committed a crime to do it, and that speaks very poorly of the character of the entire White House, including the president, if that's what it was. The only other real viable reason is that no legitimate birth certificate exists. Or at least one does not exist that has the kind of information on it that they want seen by the public. Now, if that's the case, then that's deep and dark and criminal and constitutionally scary, Michael.
You're absolutely right, Carl. You just fell into my first caller who asked me, why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And I had mentioned that Mike Zulu, along with Sheriff Joe, had run an investigation and had found that the birth certificate was fraudulent and that the information is slowly being put out there one day at a time, and we're puzzled why nobody has grabbed a hold of us. And I also went into what you just said, Paul. We don't know why fraudulent documents are put up there. We have no idea what his background is, and that's scary we're not making claims where he was born, who his parents are. What we're saying is there's a fraudulent document being posted by the White House of his birth certificate and other things too, Paul.
Absolutely. And, Michael, let me just assure your audience, things are being done. There's some huge forward movement in this. I'm not at liberty because I am privy to every detail of this criminal investigation, and it is massive, and it involves now even more than just the birth certificate. But because I'm privy to all of the information, I have to be very careful and only speak in general terms. But again, I'm a 30-year pastor, a 10-year former Florida law enforcement officer, 11-year talk radio host with a national audience. I can be trusted. I'm not a liar. I'm not a sensationalizer. I would be a fool to come on your radio program and make claims that cannot be backed up and destroy my integrity. I'm an author, too, with a major publisher, so I can just tell your audience they can trust what I'm getting ready to tell them. I am in daily contact with Mike Zullo, who is the lead investigator. And when I say daily, I mean every single day, usually 2 to 3 times a day. And this contact has been going on for months now. Mike and I traveled to Capitol Hill together. We've talked to congressmen and chiefs of staff together. We went to CPAC together, CPAC 2013. We've spoken to all manner of VIPs, very important and powerful people together. So what I'm getting ready to tell you is absolute fact, and that is this case is moving forward. There is the distinct possibility, and I can only speak in possibilities because we can't make anybody do anything, but if the VIPs who are involved in this now will keep their promises, there is the distinct possibility that within a few months there will be some major congressional movement on this. I got to tell you, Michael, all of these scandals, the IRS scandal and the gun running scandal and the Benghazi scandal and the AP phone scandal and the NSA scandal, these are actually helping our case, as terrible as that may sound, because people now get it. They now understand that this administration is based seemingly upon one lie after another, one constitutional travesty after another. And if all of these other scandals, if it can be grasped that this administration let an ambassador die to cover up something else it was doing, if this administration would let border agents die to cover up a gun-running scheme, if this administration would spy on American citizens by the millions and do it covertly and possibly illegally, if this administration would spy on news media busting open the First Amendment, surely this administration might fabricate a document, you see. So people are now getting it that these people that they've labeled us as birthers for all of these years, we don't wear tinfoil hats. We're not crazy. We're not conspiracy theorists. I mean, again, I'm a former law enforcement officer. When I first saw this stuff 5 years ago, I just started using my law enforcement investigation brain and started looking at it and was shocked at what I found. So the bottom line is we've got some very powerful people now that are involved in this. Mike Zullo just a few weeks ago stood in front of scores and scores of sheriffs, police chiefs, police officers, county officials, elected officials, attorneys, a constitutional attorney, a congressman at a big convention in Missouri and presented his entire criminal case. He even had a closed-door session where he checked credentials at the door and then presented every bit of criminal evidence he had in a 3-hour session, Michael. And those people went ballistic. They saw it. They get it. Not a single one of them questioned the evidence. Not a single one of them said, well, you don't have anything there. Every one of them, Michael, came out of there saying, oh, my gosh, we've got a fraud in the White House. Sheriff Richard Mack has been on my radio program several times and been interviewed, and he's on radio programs coast to coast now. He witnessed this. He is just livid about it. We've got congressmen now.
You can find that video on my blog. I posted it the day after. It's on where'sobama's.com/blog. That video that Carl's talking about is at the top of my blog. Go ahead, Carl.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. God bless you for that. And I forgot exactly where I was going with it now. I was headed in a direction, but anyway, so the bottom line is, I know. So we've got a congressman, Congressman Steve Stockman, and he's one of several VIPs that we're working with on this, but he has now made an appointment to meet further and go much deeper into this with Zullo. It happens that Steve Stockman was the keynote speaker at this big convention, and it also happens that Steve Stockman is one of the congressmen that Mike Zullo and I spent hours with at CPAC. So all of this is starting to come together. This takes a long time. I want to assure your audience things are being done. Just because you're not reading about it in the newspapers and hearing it on evening news every night does not mean that people are not working hard and that forward movement is not happening, because it is. The media has chosen to do a complete blackout on this. They've shut it down. They don't want to talk about it. I frankly, Michael, at this point, I think they're terrified. I think a lot of them have been threatened. As a matter of fact, we know they have. Mike Zullo has been told by several prominent media people that they were personally threatened if they covered the birth certificate issue. And, Michael, I got to tell you, out of all the scandals that you're seeing on the television set, people might say, well, why wouldn't they have the birth certificate up there? I'm telling you, Michael, because it is the scandal of scandals. It is the foundation to all of this. Think of it, Michael. What if Obama did get a border agent killed by running guns? What if he did get an ambassador killed by intrigue and by not supplying military help to a U.S. ambassador? What if he did tap the news media's telephones? What if he did personally use the IRS to target American citizens for punishment? And what if we find out he's not even an American citizen? Do you understand? This is huge, and I think the White House fears the birth certificate issue more than anything else. I think that's why they've threatened media, they've threatened politicians, they've threatened congressmen. At least it's all been alleged that this has happened, and it sure seems that way because, you know, up until now, nobody has dared to touch it. I think it is the issue of issues, Michael.
Absolutely, Carl. Carl, I got updated information from BirthaReport.com. Congressman Jeff Duncan is calling for an investigation into Obama identity fraud. He's a Republican from South Carolina.
Yeah. Well, I listened to that interview, and yeah, he did agree with the interviewer that an investigation needed to be done. I'm not super excited about it. I mean, I hope he'll keep his word. I hope he didn't feel like he was just caught in a live interview. But if you'll listen to that interview, Michael, you'll hear him at first kind of laugh when the radio interviewer mentions this needing to be investigated, and the interviewer keeps nailing him up against the wall until finally the congressman says something along the lines of, well, yeah, we do need to look into this. And so that's why the title is Congressman Calls for an Investigation. So it's not quite as powerful as it sounds, although he is now on record saying that we do need to look into it. So I'm excited in that sense, but on the other hand, I don't want to get too sensational about something that this guy may back out of. Mike Zullo and I have had congressmen and VIPs back away from us. I tell you, the most famous was Colonel Allen West. You're familiar with that story?
I'm familiar with the story, very familiar.
Yeah. Mike Zullo and I at CPAC, Colonel Allen West promised to meet with us, and promised, and finally we kind of ran him down and made him meet with us. And when he was presented with all the evidence, his jaw was on the ground, basically. And then he looked at us and said, well, I don't want to get involved in this because I have future political aspirations. I couldn't believe it. And a few days later on his website, he touts himself as this courageous man who will stand up to any scandal, who will expose any wrong. But yet he told us to our face just a few days earlier that in spite of the overwhelming criminal evidence that we might have a foreigner as commander-in-chief, he didn't want to talk about it because it might hurt him in his political aspirations. These are the kind of people running our nation or wanting to run our nation, Michael, and this is why we're in such dire straits, and this is why this thing has to be investigated. I believe it's the scandal of all scandals.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.